Hey, y'all. Welcome to episode 65 of the Half Priced Concessions Podcast. I'm your co-host, Tyler Williams, and it's good to be with you as always. This week's episode, we sit down with Caraway Speedway owner, promoter, Darren Hackett. Darren has a long history at Caraway Speedway. His father, Russell Hackett, was a longtime promoter and owner of the Speedway. Now, Darren has been in that role for quite some time now. We catch up with Darren on how the 2021 season was for Caraway Speedway, what's coming up in 2022, most notably 2 trips to the Speedway for the Solid Rock Carriers Cars Tour, along with Smart Modifieds, the North-South Shootout, and all kinds of other cool events. Plus, we dive into the history of Caraway Speedway and Darren's father, Russell Hackett, the longtime promoter at Caraway Speedway. We hear some old Russell Hackett stories that are pretty cool. So I encourage y'all to check out carawayspeedway.com. If you can't attend their events, their streaming is available at carawayspeedway.tv. And on the other side of these messages, we're talking to Darren Hackett himself right here on the Half Price Concessions Podcast.
Planning on doing some digging in your yard? Your simple backyard project could quickly turn dangerous. Buried underground cables and lines are just inches below the surface, so don't forget to make one very important call to 811. Calling 811 is the first step in having your buried utilities marked so you know where it is safe to dig. 811 is free, it's fast, and it's the law. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811.
The Half Price Concessions Podcast cannot say thank you enough to Roger Johnson and the awesome folks at the Performance Center Racing Warehouse for all their support of our podcast and of local racing. If you are an asphalt racer and you need your front or rear clip fixed, Performance Center has some of the quickest turnarounds in the country. In the market for a new race car, the PRW chassis is a proven winner. You need something for your asphalt late model stock race car, you need to get in touch with Roger Johnson and Performance Center Racing Warehouse today. Make sure you check out their website. It's performancecenter.com. That's PERFORMANCENTER.com. You can also like them on Facebook at Performance Center Racing Warehouse and call them today at 704-838-1400.
Hey podcast listeners, I'm Keith Montgomery of Montgomery Performance Consulting, and I want to help speed up your racing program. Whether you're racing dirt, asphalt, or road course, put my years of experience to work for you. Our pull-down services will help find where you're giving up speed so you can unload faster and run up front. We also offer trackside consulting and data testing to help you find speed and balance. And with our central location in Burlington, North Carolina, you can come to us for discounted rates on pull-down sessions. Call me today at 336-382-1835. Like us on Facebook at Montgomery Performance Consulting, and let us help your racing program today.
Accelerated Graphics has been supporting the Half Price Concessions Podcast from day one, and they're set up and ready to support you in whatever needs you have. From custom embroidery to screen printing, promotional items for your business, charity, or organization, banners, bulk decals, apparel, and now a fully interactive website at worth2tenths.com, Accelerated Graphics is set up to help you get the word out for your business. Wrap your race car with a look that gets you noticed, and now Accelerated Graphics also offers window tinting. Call Accelerated Graphics today at 336-266-5653 or visit the interactive website at www.worth2tenths.com or visit their showroom in person at 1130 Cherry Lane in Graham, North Carolina. Here on the Half Price Concessions Podcast, Darren Hackett from Caraway Speedway joins us. And Darren, I got to tell you, I was driving up here, and as I got close to the track, I rolled all my windows down and turned my radio off because I always remember from working at Ace, it is the weirdest thing. It is so weird how a place that is loud a lot of times when you're having races can be so eerily quiet when you're there. When you're there, when no one else is there, when you're there working, you're there weed eating, you're there doing whatever. It's so wild how these places it's an eerie quietness. But I mean, we used to say, and I'm sure you probably say the same thing. If you just sit there long enough, you'll probably hear the ghosts or see something going around. It's the weirdest thing, ain't it?
Yep,
But,
it is.
Good to see you, though, man.
Yeah.
I know you still got a few events to go this year, but the kind of meat and potatoes of your schedule is pretty much mostly done. How you assess how this year went for you guys here at Caraway Speedway?
Better than some years. I mean, it's not what it used to be 20 years ago, but nobody is, but it's better than what it has been. We've got a pretty good team of people right now. I mean, brought Randy on last year, brought Danny on this year. So, everybody's helping pull the train in the right direction, and that means a whole lot. So, I mean, it could be always better. You always want better, but it hasn't been terrible. I mean, I'm satisfied. Let's put it like that.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you're satisfied rather than not.
I mean, like I say, you never. When I say satisfied, I'm satisfied, but I'm not satisfied. But I am satisfied. I mean, because you always want more. I mean, it's just the nature of it.
It's just like a driver that wins 20 races. He wants to win 21.
Right.
So same on the promotion side. You guys had some pretty cool stuff come up this year. You were able to jump on the Cars Tour schedule to get the late model stocks to come here. You obviously had your Southern Modified races and your. I hasten to call it weekly racing because it's almost turned into bi-weekly or just where you can fit it in just because times aren't, like you said, the way they were 20 years ago. Is there any couple of kind of big high points or big things you look at this year like, man, that really went well? I mean, you had your North-South shootout as well. Any big things that stick out like, man, I'm proud of that?
We got lucky. The opener was fantastic.
Yeah.
Anytime you can get off on a good opener, that means a lot. That makes your season just easier. It really does. And, we never had any bad nights. We didn't have any. Well, this past weekend wasn't the greatest, but it still wasn't bad. But I mean, like you and I talked earlier, it was just one of those deals that we put on later in the deal, and we made a decision not to do it when it was supposed to be done. Probably a mistake, but so that's probably the worst deal of the year. I mean, but I brought in the monster trucks. We had done them before on, but we leased the racetrack, and that really went well for us. And they done 3 shows instead of 1 show, and we're negotiating bringing them back next year. Naturally, I done my one time a year crash show that I do.
Yeah.
And I brought one monster truck in for it, and it done pretty good. But all 3 modified dates went real well. But like you said, bringing the Cars Tour, I tried to get him to come here some last year. We was able to race, other people wouldn't, and it just didn't work out. But Randy worked Jack hard. Randy had a relationship with Jack where he used to work with him and all, and we must have made an impression on him. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but he called Randy. He said, I need to have a meeting with you guys back in August. And so we met in Moxville, and he wanted to bring the old North State National here. And I wasn't expecting that. I was wanting 2 dates. I was wanting to keep probably my May date and pick up the North-South Shootout. Well, he wanted that date in March. And that's normally my opening date, so we'll probably open a week before that because it's not really good to give someone else your opening date.
You always want to open with your own division.
Right.
I remember this.
So, anyhow, but then I said, so he agreed to do the shootout if we would let him do the North State Nationals in March, which worked out good because the shootout needs something to bring that late model fan in with that modified. Yeah. In other words, the late model fan is not coming to watch the shootout, which I think next year they will. And I've been trying to put something like that with it. It done pretty good in 12 and 13 and 14 along in there when Pass was doing real well.
Yeah.
But, that kind of went through its, they didn't.
Kind of like rise and fall.
Well, Super Late Models just fell off around here altogether.
Oh, yeah.
But, it started back 15 or so and it's just kept getting worse. So when we had that with the shootout, it seemed to do pretty good. But once we got down to just basically modifieds, no, you didn't bring that late model fan to the show. And that time of year, you need every fan you can get.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think adding that to it, and it'll make it the value show it needs to be. I mean, it's a $40 ticket, and it was borderline being a $40 show this year. I mean, I'm not putting the show down, but you only saw a modified show. And for that kind of purse, we have to have that kind of ticket.
Yeah.
But, we're now, we've raised the purse more, but hopefully it's going to draw enough fans and cars to make up for the difference in it. But yet the consumer gets a good value for their money at $40 in.
I was so glad for you guys how well the Cars Tour race went, because I came in to help on the broadcast, and I've seen plenty of good shows here, but I think that show going well because you didn't just have the late model fans that will come to a racetrack that's reasonable and easy enough to get to in Central North Carolina, but you also had the people watching on the pay-per-view, which Cars Tour has some pretty good stats. And it was a good show right to the end. I mean, you had a little heartbreak with Caden Honeycutt and Justin Johnson, but overall it was a good show. And I was just glad it showed well, because you always fear getting the wreck fest or getting the something crazy, and it it showed well. And
Caraway is one of those racetracks that I hate to say it, you either get a good show or a bad show. I mean,
there's no happy medium.
Right, there's not a lot in between. If you can get a pretty good car count, you normally get a good show. You normally get something that happened toward the end of the show and that's what people remember. They remember the end of it. You can have a great show if the end's terrible. They may not remember everything at the end. So, but normally if you get to get enough car, and Dad always said, the bigger racetracks, when the economy struggles, they struggle more because it takes so much more equipment to fill that big racetrack up. Right. And you saw like Myrtle Beach struggled. Concord, they're both bigger than Caraway. Caraway has struggled some getting car count in any of your bigger racetracks because it takes so much more to fill it to make a show. It's hard to make a show with 12 cars on a half mile or a quarter mile like Wake County. You can 12
cars looks like NASCAR or something.
Right.
Crazy.
I mean, really, it's the truth. It doesn't take a lot to fill it up, and it doesn't cost as much for those bull rings. Yeah. So because speed don't play as much a factor. So. But it is what it is. I mean,
that Old North State National is going to be something. I'm really looking forward to that because that's big money, and it's early in the year. Guys haven't. I know the main thing they were going for was trying to get guys before NASCAR points kind of got started. So maybe you get more guys that way, and also it's I think a racetrack that sees a lot more racing than where it has been the last couple of years, where they just haven't been able to run as much. So. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that plays out.
I went to Orange County this year for that's the first time I'd be, and it just so happened. Normally we race we done something that Saturday. I think I forgot now what we had that Saturday before, but we were able to go. I wasn't exhausted so bad that Tina, Randy, and I went, and it was a good show still in Orange County. Orange County makes it's fast racing. Yeah. The biggest thing I hope that doesn't happen is the pit dilemma he had there. I think he probably should have put them on both sides instead of one side because. I know he stops them and you go back where you started basically, but the cars get him hard getting out of pit road, which the pits at Orange County's tight, but I'm not, but every racetrack's tight. They're tight here too, so, but hopefully that's the only issue I hope Jack don't have here when he does it is because his pits was a little tight there.
Yeah, I know one thing you're definitely going to have is a lot more of the trackside parking. That's one thing you guys have here that a lot of places just don't have the geography to have and that was one of the cool things I was watching on the pay-per-view for North-South was, just how crowded it was in all the trackside. And that's a pretty fortunate thing y'all have here because not a lot of tracks have that.
Yeah. Southern National has one bigger than we have. Yeah. Because we can do about 90 units. If they're cars, you don't do 90 campers, but you can do 90 cars or something. I think he can do about 150. Yeah. Everybody else is smaller than ours that does have one. Like Orange County don't even have one really. Yeah. South Boston, they've made theirs bigger now, so they got a little more than they did have, but they're still smaller, I think, than we are. And but the trackside, that's and talking about TV numbers, Tony done the pit road TV done the shootout this time, which I felt like was what we need to do because I don't think our TV package was good enough to do that show. You need more than one camera and all that, and we've learned a lot. I mean, you're trying to say you learn as you go along.
You don't know till you try.
Right.
Then
and
you're like, wait.
I said all along I didn't think there was any money in the TV side for weekly racing.
Yeah.
But you're trying to do a promotional value because, you're going to lose. Somebody's going to buy it that was normally going to come. I mean, let's face it. You're going to lose a few sales at the gate. So if you can get enough to make those gates up and pay everything, but yet you can have promotional tools to use next week or the next week, highlight stuff like that. And we didn't do a good enough job with it. I'm first to tell you we didn't. But it was our first year at it, so we've learned a lot. But Tony said the numbers on the shootout wasn't bad, but they weren't as good as the car store. Yeah. And the car store does have good TV numbers.
Yeah. Well, hopefully with more time that'll only do it because I think the hope for everybody is that hopefully someone who wasn't going to come watches it and then that entices them to be, well, hey, that looked kind of cool. I need to go be there in person next year. I think that's
what I was listening to NASCAR XM this morning, and that's what Pete and Bagley was talking about this morning. They got talking about you can watch racing all year long because and like they were saying, in truth, Stafford done the best job of anybody. But Stafford had already been working
for years on this,
build it, and they do. And I mean, I normally go. I didn't do it as much this year because I've been so busy, but I normally would go on Friday night or Saturday morning. One of the first things I do is go on Facebook for Stafford and look at their highlight reel, and see who won. Look at the crowd. I mean, that's part of my, this, because if one person's having a good crowd, normally we all have good crowds. If one starts downhill, all of us start downhill. So, I always like to look, see what everybody else is doing, sort of, and who's winning and all that. But Stafford always had a good, highlight reel. They do interviews and put on Facebook, and so they just set the program up last year. Yeah. And they do it, but they're the top of the line on that deal. You got to give them credit for that.
They're catching up to the stick and ball sports. I think at least on my side, from what I know, I think for so long I took for granted highlights and like you used to do back in the day watching Sports Center for stick and ball sports. And then you get on this side and everybody's still kind of getting into it. You start realizing, man, that is kind of a lot of on that side to get it. So glad that's working. I know you guys. I know back when I worked for you guys a couple of years ago, you guys used to do the Speedway, and then you had a lot of the touring stuff. And now it seems like you've kind of just pared that down to the track and the track events, not roaming out as much. Has that helped you any? Has that kind of helped keep things a little tighter focused?
Yeah, she pushed more for that.
Yeah.
This is my baby, so to speak. I mean, it's all I've done since I was 7 years old. So, and I learned a lot, and I got to promote races at Concord, Hickory, Orange County. I mean, I got to do Ace. I got to do a lot of different places, and you learn. And once you do a show there, you see things that you don't see. You're trying to say, right? Yeah. And you learn. And I mean, I started doing the shootout. We've been doing it now this was the 11th one, and I've learned a lot by going in the Northeast tracks. I haven't been the last 2 years. Randy went like 8 times this year.
Yeah, his travel expenses are high.
Oh, it was high. I mean, well, but it's part of it. It's an investment. And we started the qualifiers for the shootout this year. I don't think the investment showed up this year, but I think moving forward it will. Yeah. But the talk's been good about the shootout because of adding the cars to it. I mean, I think it's elevating the show to what it needs to be. Yeah. And hopefully it'll be a top-notch show next year. But you learn from other people. I mean, going to other racetracks, all you pick up things, and one of the biggest things I wish we could get the racetracks right here to work together a little better. Yeah. I mean, for some reason it always derails. You can talk to. I mean, you was with Brad when I tried to get to work with him, and I don't know what happened. And I still like Brad. I tried to hire him this year to do race directing, and before I hired Danny, and he wasn't. He said, "I'm burnt out on doing that end of it." He said, "I just don't want to do that anymore."
I know how he feels because I'm kind of that way on weekly announcing.
And probably maybe I'm easier than some promoters because I don't get into the rule side of it as much. I always told my dad, I said, I don't know that side of it as much as you do. And he said, well, it don't matter. As long as you can count the money and you can do that, you can hire somebody. I mean, that's what he would say to me. And it is the truth. But I've learned a whole lot. I used to tell, when Lightning worked for us, he helped me during the week and all, and he'd tell me, he said, you know more than you think you know. And I said, well, I still don't know what I need to know. But it's, I'm not really dead set, this is what we got to do, like some promoters are. Because they're more... and that's the problem. If we could get, I was telling somebody today, I said, if we could get this is 3 divisions, I think, a straight frame rail division, a perimeter division, and a 602 modified at every racetrack.
Yeah, everybody could kind of travel.
Yeah, naturally you want your cars, but then when you have big shows elsewhere and you're not running, they can go there. And because we've got like 6 sets of fender division cars running around here.
We really do. We got a lot of different variations of the same class.
And we've got 10 motors in every division now. I mean, we've got, and all that's fell apart since Winston got away. Because, they kept everything kind of pushed in the same.
There was a lot of money that was flowing in.
Lake Model Stock was the main division, and it just kind of floated down from that. Well, now we're all over the board, every racetrack, and you go talk to this promoter, well, I've got to do this. I mean, don't get me wrong, if it's a spoiler difference or something like that, but if you can keep the engine package the same and the chassis package the same, then the guys can move around. Because what difference does it matter if they come in and they got an inch bigger spoiler? I mean, that's not going to win a race, is what I'm saying. You can.
Something. It can even come down to something as simple as I was talking to Barry Beggerly, and he was telling me about 1993 when he won his national championship, and it was when Winston was throwing all this money not just at the Cup deal but the local tracks, and it got me to thinking, it didn't matter back then in the 90s if I went to North Wilkesboro, if I went to Martinsville, if I went to Ace, I went to Caraway, or if I went to New River Valley, rules lined up a lot better back then. You were going to see that Winston red because everybody got bukus of red paint, and everything was just so much more uniform. And I feel like ever since then, I think that's a good place to kind of draw the line. Ever since then, it has splintered a whole lot more on the local stuff than it ever did before.
And you can't get them together. Just like they added this, they moved the fall brawl because of the tire shortage. And I understood that. When somebody called me, I said, well, against shootout, and I said, well, that's no big deal. He's not running the same thing I am. It won't matter. Well, about an hour later, I realized that the Pro Lakes was on the fall brawl. Well, I look, and he moved in with it, and it was against shootout. Well, I called Keith, and that didn't go any better than I thought it would. But I tried.
Promoters.
Well, I tried. So then Randy and I was going up the road, and I said, let's pull in and talk to Kevin. I said, all we can do is get run off. I mean, and we tried, and I pleaded and begged with him. I said, I said, you don't have to have them. I need them to go with the shootout to help make my show. And I said, we both going to end up with 8 or 10 cars. That's what we basically end up with. Mm-hmm. I think they had 11 or 12, and I had 10. So it would have been nice, but I mean, I did all I could. I mean, I tried.
Yeah. How was the tire shortage on your end? I know everybody's got a different story about.
It didn't affect me till we got to October.
Okay.
Really, I mean, it did affect it some, but by us being on a 2-tire deal, we had enough tires to keep getting by. And we didn't race that often. That we got by, but then we didn't have any tires for October. We had to cancel the late model races, those last two races in October. So then we had enough to do. We was borderline having to do the Mr. Sale Memorial in October.
Yeah, it was going to be
close. Then we had the F-15s on the 602 mods for the shootout. Well, we had enough of them left over to do them on the 602 mods, so it gave us enough tires. A good cushion of tires. So now we got enough tires to do Thanksgiving with. So we're in good shape to finish out the year. And I don't know if it's going to be much better next year or not. I think it'll start out okay, but I'm afraid that because they just done the Governor's Cup at New Smyrna. Mm-hmm. He's doing a Thanksgiving class, which I think he's using a 50, but still, they're going to go to the Snowball Derby and probably use 2,000 tires.
Yeah.
Then you'll be back at the Red Eye at New Smyrna in January. Stuff's going to be there in Florida in February. So I don't see a lot of wholesale catching up. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they'll catch up, but not. Then when everybody starts opening back up in March and April, we're going to be getting short again, I'm afraid.
I don't mean to make you sound old when I lead out this next question, but you've seen a lot more than I have. Even in my time in racing, just since '93 when I was a kid and I started paying attention, I've never seen anything like this. I don't ever remember there being something like this with race fuel or parts. Like I don't see anything that is like, well, this is what we did back in the day when we had this. Have you seen anything that rivals this kind of dilemma with racing?
No. And used to tires wasn't a big deal like they are now. I mean, in the 70s, teams didn't use tires like they do today. I mean, you good teams did, but your lower budget teams
like sixth on back didn't.
Right. They use tires, 2 tires, whatever. But like you said, it's not just tires; it's everything. Yeah. I mean, and it doesn't matter. Like me, I ordered some PA drivers. They come in. Well, I needed more then. I said, I'm gonna get some more. I had some extra speakers where we had changed out one time. I said, we'll put some more speakers up my list here. So I ordered some more drivers. They never did come in. So, well, they said be in like in October. Well, I said, that'll be in time for the shootout. We'll get it done. Well, it gets to be 1st October. I check on them. They're going to be next May. So I find some from another company, and I finally got them here last week.
Jeez.
But, I mean, I didn't have time to get them up then. But,
what a headache.
But, I mean, it's everything's like that, But those others that was originally ordered is still supposed to be here, which, I mean, I canceled the order, but next May. I mean, that's a year out. I mean, which they probably come from China. I mean,
it's probably they're hung up on a boat somewhere in the dang Pacific waiting to get on land.
But I mean, I got lucky and got the first set. I mean, I guess I ordered all they had in stock.
Do you think it gets to the point where we almost have to go open tire just to get by, or do you think that's not?
Well, we did it on the mini stock.
Yeah.
I mean, because I got 5 D800s the week of the shootout. And somebody bought 4 of them, so I got 1 left. But that's where they picked them up from somewhere else. And they had 5 of them in. And they're not scheduled to make any of those tires till next year. So we let them do that tire, the Super TD that they run at the stadium, as well as the Sportsman Tow that run Motor Mile. Just so if somebody, whatever they got, I mean, there was like 40 of those TDs there from the stadium that they could buy, which that tire won't hold up long. So
it'll fall off pretty hard.
Right, it's not really what you need to be on, but it is what it is. So
you've been doing this since, I think, correct me if I'm wrong on this. You came in here. You've been here longer, obviously, than that. But I think wasn't it 2010? Because I feel like it lined up with 2011. So it was about the time that I had started with Ace. From being here as long as you were beforehand, did any kind of thought come through your mind like, maybe let me do something else? Or were you kind of just from 9 years old, this was kind of what you wanted to do?
No, not really. Because I went to school. I was good in school. I mean, I made good grades.
That makes one of us.
Right.
That was terrible.
Well, no, I did. I mean, I made good grades, and I went to college, and I done okay.
What'd you major in?
Biology.
Really?
With pre-med. I wanted to be a dermatologist.
Oh, man.
And about 2 years through college, like I was taking some summer classes, because the way it worked out, being a science major, you got a lot of labs. So I'd end up with 14 hours a lot of times instead of 15. So you'd end up getting, so I took some summer classes and I repeated one course, so I wasn't satisfied with the grade. And so anyhow, the racetrack, I told her to come to tour the racetrack up. Well, I skipped that whole week of summer school over here working. But I wouldn't go to lunch. And Dad had a restaurant, but I couldn't go to lunch with all of them because I wasn't supposed to be home yet. So I'd wait, I'd work through lunch, and then I'd go to lunch when they all got back.
Yeah.
So that I was supposed to be just getting in from Charlotte. But anyhow, we got out of college, and I was going to get a job.
Yeah.
But I told Dad, I said, I'll help you through this summer. I said, because we just come to that little bit of recession, and there was people with experience getting jobs. They didn't need a kid just fresh out of college. There was people out here that had experience for jobs, trying to say. And I applied for one or two, and I didn't get it. And so I said, let me help you this summer. Because I was lived at home. I didn't need any money. I mean, I don't really like saying, but I didn't need it. Didn't have to have a job. I mean, you're trying to say.
Yeah.
And so I helped him that summer, and I got to doing different things and all. Well, my sister, a lady quit at the restaurant. My sister said, how about come help us for a week or two till we get somebody? Said, I'm going to do what she's doing. I just need you to help us a little week or two. And I said, I don't want to do that. Yeah, help me. So I don't have to put up with Mom and Dad there all the time.
That was the real reason. We finally got down to it.
Anyhow, that was a week after Labor Day, and I never left. Yeah. So I started drawing a paycheck.
Okay.
And that's how it come about. And in other words, he hired some people, and then so another person quit, and so I just stayed on. I got to doing that. But I really didn't like the restaurant business. It was okay, but I mean,
it wasn't for you,
right? He'd make me clock out. If he'd see me over here, I had to clock out to get paid to come here to work.
He's a businessman.
But anyhow, we, but I really, and we had a good team. I mean, over here, and I always told Dad, I said, we're probably better together than we are apart. And he probably stayed a couple years too long, but I probably wasn't ready yet. And I probably wasn't ready when I went in 2011 either. But, I could talk to him, and Tommy White stayed behind for 2 or 3 years and helped make that transition. I mean, trying to say. But, I just what I like, but I don't like being indoors. So I got to doing this, and I got to cleaning parking lots, and then I got to paving and doing that kind of stuff. And
just leads to another.
But
owning a racetrack.
But I was still getting paid at the restaurant until he closed it down.
Yeah.
And that's where I got my pay from. And I would invest that money in doing, buying equipment and stuff like that to work with. And but anyhow, we didn't have any kids or anything at that time, so it didn't cost a lot to live. And
what was it like to work for?
He wasn't too bad.
Yeah, it's always tough. I know it's always tough on his family because. It's one thing when you work with somebody that you ain't got to see at Thanksgiving and Christmas or on Sundays. So I was curious as to what he was like.
He wasn't too bad. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll never forget one time I carried this girl to college. I had already gotten out of college, and she still had one more day to go, and she had UNCG, and so I carried her up. It snowed or something, and anyhow, I wrecked his Bronco.
Oh.
Well, what happened was I was coming down, left UNCG, coming down, someone was parked in the wrong way. Mm-hmm. Well, when I went to go around that car, a car was coming. anyhow, so I couldn't get stopped, and I hit a parked car, and he was.
Oh, I bet he was pissed.
I got there at the middle of lunch, and he starts chewing me out, and he said, "Get the H out of here." And that's the words I was wanting to hear.
Shoot.
But most time he wasn't too bad. He could be. He was Russell now. It was his way or.
I was about to say. Well, back then, I mean, when in the time that he was promoting, I mean, number one, there was more cars going around, but number two, I think a lot more promoters. You almost had to be that way. And I never actually got to talk to him. I remember seeing him riding around on a golf cart back in I think 08 or 09 when I came from a modified race. But I mean, back then it was just a lot more of a hard-nosed deal. Then it kind of transitioned into you kind of just had to take a different approach. Because I remember coming over here for firecrackers, and we'd always go to Ace on Friday, but then Saturday we would rotate between Orange, Caraway, New River Valley, South Boston. Saturday was our travel day. It was just a different time. I think that's probably the hardest thing to explain to somebody that takes any interest in this is just how different those guys had to be back then.
Well, he grew up in the restaurant business. He went to work, I think when he was 16. Well, he grew up on a farm. Then he went to work at the restaurant when he was 16, and that's what he done. And when he went to Robin Hood, it was outside the city, and it was rough, and he had to be tough. And he straightened it out and got rid of some of the rough stuff. So, and he used that same approach here. I mean, he was hard-nosed. I mean, but like you said, it was a different era. And it has gotten easier as far as dealing with the drivers. And I don't mean that like it sounds. I mean, well, it hadn't and it has.
Yeah, it hadn't and that's probably the best way to put it. It hadn't and it has.
Right. I mean, they're not as hard to deal with as far as, like you said, being hard-nosed with them. But you can't go in there and be hard-nosed with them either. So
they won't come back.
Right.
So,
but the problem we probably have right now, we don't have enough drivers. Yeah. I mean, they've got the advantage on us. I hate to talk like that.
No, it's just the truth.
But they've got the advantage right now. But it has to be, and that's always been my thing, it's got to be a circle. And if there's a missing link in that circle, it's not the best.
We fall out of balance.
Right. Yeah. In the same way, just like I talked to Keith Graham when he lost his Tri-County date, he wanted to come here. And I said, and I finally agreed to run the pros, but I said, I can't run that 602 mono, I said, because it won't work. Your numbers won't work. I said, your pro purse is, in my opinion, $2,000 too high. I said, from a driver's standpoint, it's not high enough. I said, but probably in reality, it's $1,000 too much. I said, but I think I can make those numbers get close enough because you're having a decent car count, and he was.
Yeah.
I said, so, I said, but that modified deal's not going to work at that numbers. I said, there's no way. I said, there's not enough of them out here if you had them all.
Yeah.
Like we had 15 for the shootout this time. We did have 20-some at Hickory that time, but there was some northern cars in this deal this year. But if you got them all, you're only looking at 15. And those numbers, I understand you're trying to build something, but it won't work with those numbers.
It's probably the biggest thing, and that's something that nobody sees because it's behind the scenes, and it's behind the scenes for a reason. Is that balance with it? Because everybody wants to go to the racetrack and make money, but if you go so far in the hole in the loss, then we ain't gonna have nowhere to race. In the coming times, it's such a delicate business balance that I don't think people get enough credit for it. People get credit for it in other things like car dealerships or owning a chain of restaurants, movie theaters, whatever. But as far as the racetrack stuff goes, I think it gets so demonized. But I mean, it really is a balance.
Yeah.
And if you're not trying to balance it, you're going to lose.
Right. And you can't expect the spectator to pay it all. You can't expect the driver to pay it all.
Yeah.
You've got to find all the different revenues you can. Because at the end of the day, you got to pay the light bill. I mean, So,
I remember. I've never told you this. I even remember the 1 year I was working full time at Ace, and being learning why I used to think it was nothing to just flip the lights on. Like, let's just flip the lights on for the guys. And you learn real quick just that, and there's 10 million other things, but the balance of this is what it costs to cut the lights on. This is what it costs when you're looking at a forecast and it looks really bad for race day. Do we order this much food knowing that it don't look good, or alcohol sales or soda or just a myriad of things, and you don't know that until you're in it.
Yeah.
I never respected it or thought about it at any point until the one summer I worked full time and I saw a piece of it, and now I'm just like, man, that is a balance.
Yeah, it is. It's tough. I mean, and I maybe take a different approach than everybody else, but I kind of get where I think my even point is.
Okay.
That's what I go for is if I got to have this right here, can I make this work? And if I think I can make those numbers work, I'm good with trying it. I mean, and just like the Misha sale, we didn't quite hit the numbers, but we weren't as bad as it looked. I mean, but I don't think had the mini stocks been with like they're supposed to be, and a couple of different things, and we could talk the right weather. I can sit here and always find fault with anything.
Right.
But I mean, but you hit those shows, But like I told David, I said I think this is a good show, and I'd like to do it again. I said you and I both need to do a better job at picking the right dates and working it longer, but that's part of it. I mean, but you got to find that balance, like you said, and just like I said, the shootout, that $40 ticket was probably too much this year. Next year, it's really in line for the type of show you're going to see.
Oh yeah, that was another thing. I'm glad you pulled me back on track. I get off track real easy, but I've seen you guys take that north-south and do, like, I remember going to Concord and you had the supers there with like Jared Irvin and Joey Coulter, and then the supercar count fell off everywhere, like you said. I mean, Car Store's even going away from it. When I seen pairing the Car Store late models and their pro late models with that, I was like, man, that is going to be a heavy show. I mean, that's going to be I don't mean bad way. I mean, that's going to be, like you said,
it's a value show, right? It's a value show, so to speak. Now, I mean, in other words, and that's really what it should be. The fans should get a show for their money, and it's a purse that's healthy. I mean, because Jack's purse is healthy already, and he subsidizes it through his sponsors and all that. In other words, like that show, I've bought the show, but I don't pay the full purse.
Yeah.
You pay a big hunk of it, but in the same way with these pro late models. But he's taking all this other stuff he's done with it and helps subsidize it, and it's a whole lot better for him to do that than it is to go rent racetracks. I've done that.
Yeah, you've seen that side of it too.
And the sad part is when you rent a racetrack, most promoters, I don't look at it like that, or I hope I don't, but most promoters look at, well, he wrote me this rent check, that's, I'm going to sell some food, and that's it. They don't seem to help you promote your event as much because they don't really have anything invested. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
or if you've got something invested, you're going to get up and try to make sure that it happens as well. So Jack's concept, he's got a good concept, and hopefully he doesn't get any competition, because that's the last thing he needs is somebody come in and try to start another late model stock tour and bust it up, because we don't need that. I
don't think there's room for it.
Right, we don't need that.
No. Talking about your dad, pretty cool thing coming up. The Sunday after Thanksgiving, you got the Russell Hackett's Thanksgiving Classic. And I always remember that has always just kind of been that kind of last race of the year, kind of paired there a little bit with Southern National, but for like this area of the state, it seems to kind of be that last chance to get out and see some racing before it's December and Christmas and all that. Tell me something about Russell Hackett that most people don't know, because I think a lot of people, and myself included, and you made mention of it about just how hard-nosed he had to be and the generation he came from. And I think it might be easy to only see that hard exterior, but I know everybody's got two sides. So give me something Russell Hackett that you probably wouldn't know if you didn't weren't his son.
Well, he had race cars before he come here. Actually, he got to come here. They built the track in '60. I don't think he got to come here in '67. And he had race cars, and Gurney Roof was his driver. They even got in business together. They had the muffler shop business together and all that. But he and Gurney's father-in-law owned the car together. And he tried to drive, and he said he wouldn't have drive.
It wasn't for him. That's okay.
He said the corners come up too fast for him.
Yeah, he can go the straight line as the turning is hard.
But he had drag race before that. He had, but he wasn't like when he dragged. I mean, he'd protest you in a heartbut when he raced.
Oh, he would. Okay.
Yeah, he wasn't scared. I know Ronald Fox that always kept up with Swain stuff and all that. He started running here when they paved the racetrack. Dad and Gurney had a good dirt car, but when they paved it, it was a different game.
Different animal. Yeah.
So Ronald comes in and starts winning races. So Dad was going to say, I'll just buy you a car. And then he had the money to buy it. But anyhow, and so Thomas Brothers, Bub closed it down in '74. And Dad run into they'd always come. The plant was right below Robin Hood. They'd come in there and all that. And Dad run into him and his brother at Hickory, and he told me, he said, Bub's going to sell a racetrack. So they come back and bought it, and it didn't operate in '75. Yeah. And they come back and bought it, and they didn't take them long to find out they wasn't a promoter. Yeah, I mean, it just didn't.
Takes a different breed to do that.
They got off the rocky. It rained their first race out.
Yeah, it always hurts.
And they had everybody they said was here that night. Everybody was here, and it rained it out, and they got off to a bad start. Then they dropped the sanction, went to Saturday night. And anyhow, so he come to Dad and told Dad, said, you need to take that racetrack over. And Dad wouldn't. He thought nothing about a racetrack. So he finally got him to take it over, and we stayed here through '81. And Dad got sick, and we was gone those 2 years. And then we come back, and he come back to Dad, and he told Dad in '80. He started coming around there in '83, and Dad told me, he said, he wants me to take that racetrack back over. He said, I just know how Howard is. And so he was talking to Howard, and he was just going to work for Howard and run it. And all of a sudden, Howard just disappeared. He quit coming by. And Dad said, I don't know what happened. So he thought he had it sold.
Yeah.
And the deal fell through. So he come back and told Dad, he said, you just take the place and run it. Said, you get to pick up the keys from Bob Sweat, you just run it, and said, you don't owe me rent or anything. So the first year we come back, we didn't pay rent. But Dad told me, he said, well, I'll go back and do it. But he said, if you ever want to sell it, I get first opportunity. Yeah. So when Sam got hurt later that year, and Dad talked him into putting Jimmy in the car, and Jimmy won races and done well. But Howard wasn't satisfied with Jimmy's performance.
It just wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't.
It wasn't Sam Ard. I don't think like Sam.
Who was?
Sam and Howard was good together.
Yeah.
Howard had the money, and Howard wanted to. He didn't care if the car come back torn to pieces as long as it was up front when it got tore up. He wanted to be leading races. He wouldn't leave around have a car cover because he wanted the car to be seen going down the road. He said that sold his product, which it did. I mean, I'm trying to say. So then they brought Bodine in, but the cars got gone that Sam had, and they didn't know what Sam done to the cars.
He kept.
Well, no, what happened was he would go back in the middle of the night and work on them.
So what they saw, they were like,
right.
Well, what happened between last night and this morning?
And so they never saw what he was actually doing to the front end and stuff. Oh. And Sam built Dad and Gurney a couple of cars and things like that. I mean, and it wasn't a bad deal. I mean, you know what I'm trying to say? It's just that stuff got used up, and by the time Bodine left there, they'd used it up. Yeah. And Howard spent $800,000 running them 10 races or whatever in '88, and he quit. I went to Orange County to see that race. Yeah. And he was leaving as I was leaving, and he was a dejected person because I think he had Tom Muster and Joe Milliken in two cars. They was back there running dead last, hitting each other. Oh. I mean, you know,
that takes the fun out of it.
Right. I don't mean it being bad. It's just that the cars were that bad, and he wasn't and it wasn't motors because B&R was still building the motors, and it wasn't motors. It's just the cars and things. They just hadn't, you know.
They hadn't kept up. Yeah.
So by that time, he told Sam to come get all the stuff. He gave Sam all the stuff, and he quit. He told Dad, said, I'm going to sell the restaurant. We don't need it anymore. But they couldn't sell it till the next year because of the tax deal or something or another. And then that's when we bought it, and you know, and it just kept getting better and better, and we worked at it harder and harder, and the times got good, and he got a sanction in '94, and that was he pushed hard for a sanction. Yeah. And I had talked to him about dropping it a couple of times before I did, and so I kept it till he was gone. And I don't mean that being, you know.
No, it's just.
And I called Kevin after Dad died, and I said, you know, I don't know. I said, and I'm not talking bad about NASCAR. I bled NASCAR blue, I guess, a long time, but it's just they don't have anything to offer the weekly tracks anymore. Their program,
a lot of tracks have gone to that.
Their program is just not. They don't have anything. You know, I talked to Kevin at South Boston in September, and he said he thinks maybe Advance is going to be a better sponsor and do more. But I mean, they don't have anything.
It ain't like it used to be.
Right. You know, you were giving them money. I don't mean like sales. Before, they would give you enough back to cover what you was giving, if not more. Where now, all of a sudden, you're giving them money and you're not getting anything back, and it doesn't bring cars to the table like it used to or anything else. I mean, they're just, you know, but he worked hard to get one because it got messed up here when Bub had got a sanction, and he and Bill Jr. had words over it.
I'm sure.
Supposedly he called Bill Jr. up on Saturday night and cussed him out. But when the stadium opened, he didn't have any race cars. He had dropped some of his divisions. He thought he was going to keep modifieds and all, and that didn't work. I mean, So Dad kept politicking, and he went to Tri-County in '93, and he finally got a sanction here in '94. Stadium agreed to let us have a Saturday night sanction, and and like I say, it was great. We were getting cars from Ace because Massey started coming and running for points. You'd pick up some cars, come here. You would get some cars from Tri-County, would come here. And they done that everywhere, not just here. You know what I'm trying to say?
It was everywhere.
And it went on. And I think one of the things that tore that apart was when they started making the car count. Well, yeah, Winston went away for number one. Yeah. And then number two, they started making the car count as part of the point structure.
Yeah, I've always thought that was,
and so
nothing good came from that.
Because if you didn't meet it, it didn't do anybody any good to come race with you.
Yeah.
And it just, it just started driving the tracks that were borderline tracks. It just kept pushing them further down then. I mean, that probably devalued the sanction more than anything. They went back to regions now, which I think is good because states. I mean, you had the state of Virginia one track. I mean, Tennessee one track, Kingsport.
Yeah, and Virginia had like 15 or 10 or North Carolina was the same way.
I mean, you're trying to say so that wasn't a fair system. I mean, I know that the regions probably was hard too. Yeah, because that was their NASCAR's complaint. Well, everybody wants to be in this region, that region. It's political. Well, it might be, but it worked. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but it did.
Yeah.
But Dad done a lot more for racers than people realized.
Yeah.
He would do things for them that nobody knew about and things like that.
Things that he probably wouldn't have tell us. Yeah,
he finally told me a couple of things there at the end that he'd done for some people and all. And but I mean, like I say, he done more for them than people realized.
Well, I think that's a pretty good one to end on. Unless you got another story you want to share.
Well,
I think you done bored your soul enough, and I'm not a psychiatrist. But I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next year. I'm gonna try to get here to come watch the Thanksgiving Classic. But
well, how that show come about was.
Yeah, tell me about that.
We run the first Enduro was at Friday night on Labor Day weekend at 86, and they backed our way up to the interstate. We lost more people when we got here.
Wow.
we delayed the show an hour. It was the largest crowd we ever had.
Just for an Enduro?
Yeah, that was the first one in this area.
How long was it? Like, was it an hour?
2.5 hours or 200 laps. And it lasted about 3 hours because we didn't count the red flag times.
Yeah, when they would just get piled up in front.
Yeah, but we started like 130 cars. So,
oh my God.
So, the promoter's in, I got to do another one of these. Yeah. So he done it. He came up with the idea to do it on Thanksgiving. But back then, Thomas Brothers wouldn't let us run on Sunday. They didn't want the racetrack to run on Sunday, so he done it on Thanksgiving Day. Well, it done okay.
But a lot of people's at home and family stuff.
And so anyhow, done it a year or two, so he moved it to the Sunday after Thanksgiving. Well, then Harmon went to Myrtle Beach and done the Myrtle Beach 400 as an all-pro show. Mm-hmm. So he backed it up to the week before Thanksgiving and got to add mini stocks to it because Enduros got where they were okay, but that time of year it really didn't care, Yeah. And the show kept getting more stuff added to it. But then Myrtle Beach backed up, so then he moved back to Thanksgiving weekend, and then Southern National started doing a Thanksgiving show after they opened up and all that. But those brothers that opened Southern National, they come here, and I'll never forget. Dad told them, said it's not going to work. There was it 8 brothers or 5 brothers or something like that in that
something
deal.
Something like that. It was a lot.
He said, y'all can't get along good enough to run a racetrack. He said, all 5 brothers probably can. He said, but y'all going to start losing money. You got to go home to your wives, and it won't be long that, and I don't think they believed him at the time, but they probably would believe it now.
Yeah.
But, because these things are tough. I mean, it's a borderline, once you break over that break even.
Yeah. But you got to get there.
And it's very easy to have them some that don't, and if you have very many that don't get to that point, you can have a bad season quick.
Yeah. Well, Darren, I appreciate your time, brother.
I appreciate you doing this.
Appreciate your hospitality.
Appreciate what you do for weekly racing.
Yeah, you ain't kicked me out of Caraway Speedway yet, so I appreciate you always being nice to me. But nah, seriously, I'm really looking forward to seeing Old North State Nationals be here, and I just hope it is. I hope they got 50 cars, and I hope it's just a hell of a show, and I hope it just continues going good for you, brother.
I mean, really, I think that we got a lot of things going in the right direction. Because like I said, I've got some good people hanging around right now, and that's what it's all about. I'm just one person. I don't know
about Danny Willard, though. We might have to talk about Danny Willard. I'm just kidding. I love Danny to death. I give him hell. But,
well, I tell you what, he has a real good relationship with the racer.
He does. Because I remember when he used to race here.
Anybody can sit up there and make a ball and strike call, so to speak.
Yeah.
But to make that call, and if it don't go exactly the way somebody wants it to go, go down there
and face them.
And make them understand it, and he can do that. Yeah. He seems to be able to do that, and that's what I was after when I hired him. I wanted somebody that could, and like I said, I talked to Brad too before I talked to him, and Brad had that concept about him too. For some reason, he could look at a racer, and at the end of the day, they can walk off and shake hands, and that's not something a lot of people can do.
It's easy to get in your feelings and not be able to. But appreciate it, brother.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Half Priced Concessions Podcast. Real quick, make sure you hit the subscribe button on whatever app you're using, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, TuneIn, whatever it is. Make sure you hit subscribe. That way, whenever we do put out new episodes, you won't have to sit there and look or wonder or worry. They'll be right there popped up on your phone. And before I leave, remember this, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. God bless you. Thank you for listening.